welcome to the Deep End podcast. This is a super, 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 I can't say super enough, exciting evening for all of us. I'm Saeed, and I'm joined by my co host, Hank, and one of the residents at Penn Plastic Surgery, and Dr. Rohrich. So thank you, Dr. Rohrich, for joining us tonight.
It's
I
my
could probably,
pleasure.
of course, I could probably spend uh, 17,000 podcasts just introducing Dr. Rohrich and everything he's done, everything he's contributed to our field. I think perhaps what's most important than all of that is just what an incredible mentor he is. And I can speak to this just for a few seconds in that we had a brief conversation at the association in Miami a few years back. We talked for probably 30 minutes at one of the receptions. And then I went home to Philadelphia. He went home to Dallas. And then I got an email from Maddie and Aaron from PRS saying that they wanted me to be the next PRS resident ambassador. And that's just a sign of Dr. Rohrich taking, is an opportunity to mentor somebody from afar. I think on top of all of that, I do want to mention a few things, but obviously, he was the past president of the PRS Journal, and he was the founding chair of the Department of Plastic Surgery at UT Southwestern. And we're going to talk a little bit about that a little bit later. In addition to all of those roles, he's been a leader in our society at every single level, from being past president of ASPS, Association of Academic Chairs of Plastic Surgery, Rhinoplasty Society, Dallas Society of Plastic Surgeons, Texas Society of Plastic Surgeons, and equally important, also was the past chair of the Residency Review Committee for Plastic Surgery, as well as the past director and chair of the oral exam of the American Board of Plastic Surgery, which I took last year. So it feels a lot better to be on this side of the sideline. But without further ado, I want to dive right in because there's just so much you can learn from Dr. Rohrich and such an incredible, fascinating, inspiring legacy that I'm so excited to have the opportunity to share it with so many other people. So to begin, Dr. Rohrich, can you please just kind of share with the audience, share with us what your pathway to medicine and surgery was when you were younger and what inspired you?
Well, thanks for that wonderful introduction. I wish my mother could have heard it because she always said, "When are you going to get a job?" So, I grew up on a ranch in North Dakota, and I didn't speak English till I was 5, and then because it was a German-Russian community, and I didn't have much exposure to anything related to medicine until I went to school, and I think I was a seventh grader, and my science teacher turned me on to science, and I loved it. And really, I think that, along with just wanting to help others, and there was no physician within 100 miles of where I grew up, so I always wanted to do something like become a physician, which was a novel thing since nobody even saw somebody unless you were really hurt or dying. So that was my initial drive to become a physician. And then I think it just blossomed, when I went to medical school at Baylor in Houston. And I originally was going to be a cardiac surgeon because, of course, you go to Baylor because it's a cardiac place. I actually was fortunate to be
DeBakey.
Kabeki. You bet. I was fortunate to actually be on his service as a medical student, and he was an elderly statesman then, but he was so nice and kind to me. And one day he said, we were finishing they did like 25 hearts a day. And he said, I want you to meet one of my friends, and he's the chair of plastic surgery, and happened to be Dr. Mel Spira.
Oh,
And
wow.
he was doing a cleft lip. And you never probably met Dr. Spire, but he was very inviting. So I was just a third year medical student, and he said, "Scrub in." And I'm going, "Oh my God." So I scrub in with Dr. Spira, the chair of plastic surgery, and watched them do a cleft lip. And then after that, it was history. I said, "You know what? The
Wow.
heck with cardiac." And thank God I did, because, it changed my life. And after that, I said, I want to do that. I want to fix things like that. That's why I really wanted to become a plastic surgeon because of
Yeah.
that. And it's been an incredible path, because just like anything else in life, if you do things that you love, you found the right path. Because I know all of you, I know you very well that I bet you don't feel like you go to work at all. You're doing what you love every day, right? And so that means you're right where you need to be because I haven't worked a day in my life. I just love what I do.
No, you're right. I mean, for somebody like DeBakey to pull you aside and do something like that with, he has such an incredible legacy, but he probably didn't do that to everybody. So that was probably an incredible honor, incredible honor. But
Yeah, he was great. So I've had a lot of mentors, and that's meant, life is all about mentorship.
Yeah, and
yeah,
even the people that you directly mentor, that obviously has an impact that's tangible. But when you mentor people like Dr. Azori, they learn from how they were mentored and then mentor others. So I feel grateful that now Dr. Azori is kind of like my mentor and some of that, at least from all the people that mentored him. And
yeah.
I just started as an intern in July at Penn, which is a very esteemed institution. I'm grateful and honored to be here. I'm curious, what are some of the influences of training at institutions like Michigan and Harvard and other, esteemed places like that?
Well, it was phenomenal. And everybody, you only stand on the shoulders of those that go before you. And I was very fortunate not only to have Dr. Spira, but when I went to Michigan, I had legends like I had Dr. Grab, Dr. Dingman, and Dr. Steve Mathis. These are all legends, and they were
Hmm.
all they were all my chairs because when I was a third year at Michigan, Dr. Grab unfortunately passed, and then Dr. Dingman came back, who was a real legend in craniofacial surgery, and so we got to work with him, and then of course Dr. Mathis came as chair. So these were all incredible people you learn so much from. And, not only in what they said and wrote, but what they did and acted. And I think that's the important thing. And you really got to pass it on. And part of our DNA is that we have to give back. And I think that's the important role we have in medicine, especially in plastic surgery, because we're a very unique specialty. We don't own an organ like the brain or the prostate. We own innovation. So we have to pass on what we've learned so that we can make it better. And so I've had incredible mentors at Michigan, at Harvard, Jim May. It was, amazing. And he really was very methodical. And, I did my hand in microsurgery there. And then I must tell you, the most important thing is it's your co-residents too that are mentors. Like when I was an intern at Michigan, the chief resident was Jack Gunter.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Pretty crazy. And he was mid-career. He had come back mid-career in ENT to do a plastic surgery residency. Pretty crazy. And he really said, I want to teach plastic surgeons how to do rhinoplasty and do it open, which then was total heresy. It was heresy to do an open rhinoplasty. And this is in the
Hmm.
80s. I mean, I did the first open rhinoplasty at the Mass General. I think I almost got fired by Dr. May, who came in and saw me. That was the hand and micro fellow. And I said, well, it is a little connected to the hand, but it was great because of Jack Gunter and people like Fritz Barton and at that time, UT Southwestern really was not an unknown entity. There was no full-time faculty, so I really became the really one of the first full-time faculty there. Someone had been there like a year or so before, but so I became the first full-time faculty along with, and then Dr. Barton and Bird were, of course, part-time, but then Parkland, and we had a couple of residents. I grew it to six residents eventually, and from one faculty to almost 30 over 25 years, and it was a fun journey. I mean, it's always about, the journey, not the destination.
Yeah. This is why I love a podcast like this. It gives us the opportunity to hear from you, hear your story, and it's just I can't say how wonderful it is. And you've said so many like important things so far about mentorship. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And John Cameron used to tell me that, a lot when I was a general surgery resident at Hopkins. Watching your mentors and just learning from them. I remember I spent 2 years at the NIH, and the chief of the branch would never eat first. He let everyone eat before him, and then he would always be the last to eat. And even me just observing you at a conference and then giving me the opportunity to serve on the PRS resident ambassador, like things like that, just make me want to pass it forward. So well, you kind of did a nice segue into UT Southwestern, and this is extremely important because you were the founding chair of the Department of Plastic Surgery of probably, one of the most historic, well-regarded, excellent training programs. And how did it feel, and what can you reflect on now looking back?
Yeah. Well, I think everything starts, when you have a purpose, a passion and a mission. I think you really have to start with the passion and then a plan, because when I became chair when I'd only been there like I think not even 4 years, when Dr. Barton said to me, well, I'm going to go into private practice and I'm going to be leaving. And I said, well, geez. So I had just become an associate professor. And I said, well, gee, well, that's not a good thing. But several things happened that really crystallized why I stayed and why I did what I did. Because at that time, there was an amazing dean and an amazing president. So, they were doctors, Neves, who was the dean, and Dr. Willenthal. And these were people that stayed with me for about 15 years while I built a department, which, of course, as you know, today, the dean lasts about 2 years, and that's their tenure. So they they said to me, okay, what does it take for you to stay here? And I said, well, I gave him a 10-page handwritten sheet of what I said I would do if you gave me the following. If you did two things, if you made the division a department. Now you remember that was only a department of one. And I said, and
Yeah.
I need to be made a full professor. And they said, well, I don't know if we can do either one of those, because, you just became an associate professor and that would be the youngest ever to do that. And I said, well, those are just the things that I said, I'm only asking you to do two things. I'm giving you 10 pages of the things I'm going to do. So I think it's pretty one-sided. So they actually came through, and that's what happened. So then I became a chair, and then I began to build. And then 2 years later, they actually had to pass legislation to become so I could become a department. And we did it, and then that allowed me then to grow, because becoming a department is an essential part, I think, of becoming, a truly global, autonomous department. Because if you're totally separate from surgery, and nothing against surgery, um, you can train plastic surgeons from the bottom up, and you really have all the independence, but you also have the risk. It's risk reward. Life is full of risks. If you're not willing to take risks, then you're not going to have a great reward. But I took that risk, and it really opened up a lot of channels for me, because over the time period, we became the most productive academic faculty with the most publications per year, 200 per year, and most RVUs per year of any department of the 22. And I was the chair of the clinical chairs for over a decade of the 22 departments at UT Southwestern. So we built a fairly substantial program. It took time. It took about 15 years to do that, but the key is it's really three things. It's your passion, stay purpose driven, and you got to persevere because, success is not like this. Success is not this. It's like this, as you know.
Yeah.
It's successes and failures all the way to the top. And the key is to not ever give up. And,
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of Winston Churchill, who, really
Yep.
said never give up. If he hadn't given up, we would have lost World War II because his biggest thing was he convinced the US to become partners against the Nazis. So I think that's kind of, the track to being successful in life. And it was no different in academics. Obviously, there's a lot of, stair steps and
Yeah.
there's turns and we did a lot of great things. We hired a lot, and you always want to hire people that are as good or better than you. And I think those are always good things, and you learn from people along the way. You learn from your mistakes more than you learn from the things you do correctly.
Yeah.
So
So you were 4 years in when you became chair. Is that right?
yes, I
That's
was 36.
so
Yeah, I was 36. I didn't know
36.
anything.
Wow. So talk about risk.
Yeah,
I mean, they, obviously you need buy-in from the higher ups of the institution,
right.
but in a way they took a risk, but they probably saw something in you, obviously, and fortunately they were right. And because UT Southwestern has, I know a lot about the different programs, but it has an incredible legacy.
Right.
And you are a big reason why everyone still, even to this day, talks about that program. And wow, it's just incredible just to reflect on it. I think you talked about the key skills for leadership, and you've had many different leadership roles. Being prepared for failures, never giving up, and the energy that you have. I'm going to add that in because you have an incredible amount of energy. Anything else that you want to highlight?
Well, I think the other thing you should do is you should always surround yourself with great people. I think you cannot emphasize not only people that are as good or better than you, but you just got to, and you put them in leadership roles and let them do their deal. I mean, nobody that works with me, I ever tell them what to do every day. Because if I have to tell somebody what to do, they really don't last long in my sphere, whether it's,
Mm-hmm.
the faculty or people I have. I mean, most of my staff has been with me for 20, 30 years because it's a risk reward. We do well, my staff as well. So it's about sharing in the joys of work and the hard work, and then looking at the successes. So you kind of grow together, and when you go up that ladder, just make sure you're going up your own ladder and not throwing other people off.
No,
But as
absolutely.
important as people getting on the right people on the bus, you also have to get the wrong people off the bus. There's a
Yeah.
great book called Good to Great. It's by Collins. It's a really good book. And basically it talks a lot about leadership, but really you want to get everybody focused on the ultimate vision. And you have to have a vision that's shared by everybody. Because if you're going to be a true leader and an educator, you have to have a vision of what everybody can buy into. And your job is to have everybody buy into that vision. And once they buy into that vision, everything else becomes equal. And our vision was to be the best and have an incredible program and everybody from the check-in clerk to my partners, they have all the same vision. And I think that's really important. And I did the same thing with the journal when I inherited it from Dr. Goldwyn. So
Yeah, it's really about
Yeah.
developing that culture, whether it's within a residency program, building a department. And it reminds me a lot of being like a head coach of a football team because you have to hire a good offensive coordinator, you have to have a good defensive
right.
coordinator, all making a
Mhm.
lot of game day decisions that you're not necessarily able to make, but you need to kind of make sure you're building, everyone around you, whether it's a player that's greedy or whatever, that'll take away from the entire team. So it's kind of, but to be at such a young age and have that foresight is what I find so incredible, because usually that takes years and years to develop what a good culture would be to be successful and learning from mistakes and stuff like that. But for you to have that so early on is what is so incredible.
Well, everybody, you make
Yeah.
mistakes, and there's no doubt about it. And I had some mentors here, but not as many as I did, obviously, in my training because I was kind of the Lone Ranger. But it was good. I mean, I would spend a lot of time visiting with my friends from around the country and ask them advice, and I think that's a really good thing because they can help you, go through the same miseries that you've been through, and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so it was good, but some of it was trailblazing, like doing independent things in departments and establishing different pathways and trainings and adding residents and things like that.
yeah. And you came through at such a, great time through great programs. I see pictures of people who went through the MGH program, you yourself, Andy Lee, Nick Vetter, Lou Bucky. It's just an incredible legacy of leaders in their own way. And it's funny, your story of the rhinoplasty reminds me of a story, an old story that people used to talk about at Hopkins, because you did the rhinoplasty as a hand surgeon. But there was a case that Halstead wanted to do, but when Halstead was out of town, Harvey Cushing actually snuck it in and did the case himself. And
No.
that was one of the things that kind of made Harvey Cushing very famous at Hopkins. But talking now, let's kind of segue into like the many different roles that you played in society as well, because as you've said before, it's all about giving back, and you've done that. You're past president of ASPS, Association of Academic Chairs of Plastic Surgery, Rhinoplasty Society, and the list goes on and on. What's the importance of playing such an active role in those societies? And are those things that you sought out, or are those things that you just kind of put your head down, worked hard, and it was based off, people just observed that and you got it?
I think that's a good question, Sid. I think it's a combination of both. I certainly didn't seek out to become, you know, the president of the ASPS. I mean, I did that. I think I was one of the youngest as well. It's just that it happened that way because I was originally supposed to be president of the EF, and then they flipped the ballot and asked me the next day to become the president of ASPS. So, and the reason they did that is because I was coming in the next year as editor of the journal, so I could never have been the president of the ASPS. So I had to become the president the year before I became editor of the journal. So, and that was like 20, 22 years ago. But I think the biggest thing is you do what you love what you do. And, I love, I love the societies are a great place, not only to learn, but also it's camaraderie, it's teamwork, and you're learning from others. And I think that's a great thing. I mean, if you really want to, help advance plastic surgery or the societies, you should be involved in the ones that are important to you. And that's what I did. And just like with the journal, I actually got interested in the journal because I kept getting articles rejected. So I thought, well, I
Yeah, right.
probably should learn a little more about the journal.
Yeah.
So,
Do you miss Maddie and Aaron? You
of
probably
course,
see.
I talked to him. Yeah.
They're
I talk
such
to them,
wonderful
I
people.
talk to them not infrequently. They're awesome. They're great. And yeah, it's great. I'm glad I've got my whole staff still there. I mean, they're the heart and soul of the White Journal, as you know, you
Well, and
know.
that's why you talk about the Department of UT Southwestern surrounding yourself by people that help elevate whatever you're trying to do. And certainly Maddie and Aaron Donnell, your entire team there, they're just like such wonderful, wonderful people.
Yeah.
Um, but so let's segue into that a little bit, and your time at PRS Journal as the editor in chief. What are you? How did that kind of come about? How did you become the editor in chief of the journal? And then what are your
Well,
proudest moments?
well, I became editor in 2000, 2 or 3, and the reason I was an associate editor for several years, and then a cosmetic section editor. And then when Dr. Goldwyn decided to retire, I applied along with, I don't know, 20 or 30 other people, and they narrowed it to 6, and then to me. But the amazing thing is, I love Dr. Goldwyn. He was an amazing, amazing editor. And I inherited the journal, and the impact factor was 1.2, and it
Wow.
was all paper driven. And so I went up to the office. I'll never forget. It was a cold January. I went up and we had no staff. I hired one full-time staff. Well, we had a half-time staff for the first year. I went up and Dr. Goldwyn showed me how he selects articles, and the office was on Brookline, and it had two rotary phones, a fax, and a DOS computer, and that was it. And I said, wow. And then it had about 20, I don't know, 20 or 30 huge files of articles that had been accepted to the journal, which I didn't know about, like 200 of them. And he showed
Were
me
any of
how
them yours?
this was pardon me,
Were any of those articles
that
yours?
was pretty, no. Well, some of them were, but I didn't know that they had been accepted. And so he showed me how he would lay all the articles out on the floor and then look at them from head to toe and then select them by hand. And I said, wow, I can't do that. So I said, thank you, that's fantastic. But I already had editorial manager in mind. And so I said, I'm just going to take this, totally paperless. And he said, well, that could kill the journal. I said, well, I hope it doesn't. But I said, you got to believe in me. And I said, because I can't have this, I can't have these papers and all of these UPS and FedEx packages in the back door. And then they gave people 8 weeks to do reviews, and some of them got lost. And oh my God, it was just a nightmare. So I took it paperless, and lo and behold, within 6 months, we doubled the number of articles that actually were coming in rather than losing them. And then the rest of that is history. And so now we have, then we basically, and then there was no system of reviewers. It was on 3 yellow sticky pads, the reviewers for the journal. There were 3 yellow sticky pads. I still have them, that were the reviewers of the journal. So then I developed a spreadsheet, I had about 600 reviewers and then of course I expanded the editorial board, from 24 to 32 and did all that stuff. And then, we took it from, 1.3 to 5.182 when I left. And then, of course, I also started the Global Open, which was another journey because that I
Hmm.
had to get through the ASPS, the Global Open, because I was also the president of the World Editors Association. So I knew years before anybody in North America that open access you had to do it.
And
And I
now
brought the
everyone's
idea
doing it.
back to, oh
Everyone.
yeah, and everybody's doing it. But when I brought it back, it was heresy, and people were really upset with
Mhm.
me. In fact, it was turned down by the ASPS. It was turned down by the executive committee, and luckily, since I was president of the ASPS, I actually got them to reconsider it. So they reconsidered it and passed it by one vote. Well, thank God they did, because
Yeah.
it's now, really a parallel journal to the White Journal. And because I knew that we had to do that. And of course, now it's the Global Open is the model plastic surgery journal. Was the first open access journal in the world for plastic surgery.
Wow.
But we did that, and but that's a real story, and so it was a real journey, and people really were upset at me for that. But when people are upset at you, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
So
I've heard
when
that
people
before.
I was gonna
are,
say you need to be able
look
to
at
quit
Elon,
your
look at
job
Elon
for
Musk. People hate. Look at Elon Musk. People hate him. He's
Yeah.
doing great.
Yeah.
I think he's down in South Texas launching his next rocket that comes back, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is tonight, actually. I
Yes,
think it
and yeah,
is.
with President Trump, and
Yeah.
you know, so it's amazing. So you've got to push the limits, but also you have to think out of the box. So I think one of the best things I think that I helped implement with the journal was getting Global Open uh, developed as an open access, and really taking the impact factor to a higher level, and also making it evidence-based and putting it online, and doing videos and interactive discussions. All that just kind of blossomed, and we were the first peer-reviewed journal to do all those things and to really bring it to life, not only as a reading journal, but as a visual journal and as an
Totally.
articulate discussion journal. And that's what we did. And I think other journals have tried to emulate that, not to the level of PRS, but that's what we
Yeah.
did.
Yeah, I think and Jeff Janis was a good selection for the editor in chief of Pure Esco. He has that energy and
Yeah,
but
I
it's
trained him. Yeah.
I know that's part of the reason why to think back, you know, when you guys were all at UT Southwestern, I wish I could have been a trainee there for a day just to experience the energy. Um, but so I mean, it's funny to think back to when you're talking about the phones and this and the sticky tabs with the different reviewers and how far the journal has come today. And hopefully you'll continue to play such an active role in it because you know, we still see your face with the journal whenever I get an article or whatever, and it's such an incredible honor to get an article accepted to it. But so the next thing I wanted to ask you about is, you know, there's a lot of talk about you were past chair of the residency review committee for plastic surgery. There's this whole talk about, you know, the independent track, the integrated track. What are your thoughts for the future of training of plastic surgery? There is this whole paradigm shift where we went from combined to independent integrated and now integrated independent. What do you
You
think
did.
about the future?
Well, you know, we did that in my tenure. We
Yeah.
solidified and got rid of all the combined, all that confusion. You know, we did that in my tenure, and I was on the committee for 6 or 7 years, and I was chair for 3 years, and it was probably the most challenging committee and most powerful committee in all of plastic surgery because there was only like 8 of us, and we really decided the future of plastic surgery and of every program. So it was a real incredible time when we solidified and made just integrated and independent. And the independent were only supposed to go for 10 more years. We were going to reassess it. And hopefully it's being reassessed now. But the pathway that we chose, it was a painful pathway because there was a lot of, not, there was some that didn't necessarily agree, but it was the right decision is to make the integrated the pathway from beginning to end because it
Hmm.
really you have to be a plastic surgeon trained by plastic surgeons, and that's it. I mean, maybe in the
Hmm.
40s and 50s that was fine, but not today. So
Hmm.
we left the independent pathway there for that gap time. And I think the gap time to me is closing because of the fact that general surgery has changed so much. When I would take a general surgery resident compare them to the same level of integrated resident, the integrated resident was like just eons ahead by technical skills, knowledge, everything. And that's why I would have to take the independent resident under my under my direction for the first few months to even teach them how to sew because of the
Yeah,
fact that they were smart, but they were general surgeons and they didn't know how to do, they know how to handle tissue because you know it's an endoscopic specialty today, and that's not their
absolutely.
fault. So
Mm.
I think it was a huge leap forward, but it was probably the most important, even though it was a small committee, it was the most important thing that we did because we shaped the future of plastic surgery. And also, I pushed to expand residencies by 30% at least during my tenure because I really pushed good programs to add more residents. And it's really, and we're still not even there, you know, because what is it? 60, 70% of applicants that apply to plastic surgery don't get in, or only 60, 70% get in. I
Yeah.
mean, that's crazy. So,
Hmm.
we are way behind our competing specialties, ENT and ENT did it right, but we missed it by a decade. So we're trying to catch up. So I think it's a very important time. And also the reason I'm so much of an advocate for expanding plastic surgery is because we're making new ground, but we're losing a lot of ground too in aesthetic
Hmm.
surgery and other surgery, microsurgery
Yes.
and things like that. And it's really, and breast surgery. If we are not
Hmm.
careful, we have to stay at the cutting bleeding edge. If we're not, we're going to, you know, it's the same struggle that we had and now you guys are having. But you guys have to step up, and that's why, like in cosmetic surgery, if we are not careful, we're going to lose rhinoplasty and facelift surgery.
No, and I feel like it's like anything in life. I think you have to be constantly thinking about how, constantly advancing, changing things.
Right.
If you have a mall and you build a mall in the 1990s, it can't just be the same mall into the 2000s and 2024. You have to constantly reinvent it. You're absolutely right. And the whole, I'm a product of the independent track, and I can speak to this a little bit. Coming in was incredibly challenging to go from a chief resident in general surgery at Hopkins, which was a highly regarded program, to not even knowing how to close skin as an independent.
And
It's
you're
crazy.
and you're a rock star, and you're a rock
No,
star.
I'm
No,
not a
I'm
rock
telling you.
star.
No, the other thing is the applicant pool has changed. I mean,
It has, yeah.
you are a rock star. I mean, my God, there were years when, because we took six residents, four integrated and two independent, and the disparity, I mean, was amazing. And there were very few rock stars like you
I don't know
that
about that.
because
That's not true.
it's how many years did you train?
Uh, 7 general surgery and then 3 plastics, 1 micro.
Yeah, see, look at that. That's amazing. You deserve a gold star. You really do.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
Well,
trained
you,
8 years. Yeah, I mean, you guys are training 6 years, but I trained 8 years because I did hand micro craniofacial, but I don't regret any of those years, and I'm sure you don't either,
same.
right?
I don't
You don't
either.
either.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved hand micro, I loved craniofacial, I loved it all because I learned so much from everybody. So
And
and
that's
and
probably how you can be the editor in chief of a journal because you trained in hand, you trained in micro, you knew
right.
cosmetic.
So
So,
I read every article every day. I reviewed 40 articles every morning and every night because I knew everybody. So I know craniofacial, I know hand micro, I mean I know what I'm talking about, but I've done that. And so I know exactly who and what. That's why I could reject articles that were meaningless because I knew that it was like. So, but I mean it's a journey, but the being editor is a very challenging um, thing to do because you engender a lot of people that may not like you, and I got a lot of people that I always tell them, I said, I said the biggest thing is, I want to treat everybody fairly. Believe me, I probably have more articles rejected from the journal than anybody. Really, I have. And from other journals. So especially if my name's on it, it gets 4 times the reviewers of anybody else. So it's okay. It's okay. But what I'm saying is everybody needs to be treated fairly. And
mhm.
that's the most important thing you can do. And because I literally was almost physically accosted in some international countries. But
Wow.
yeah, but I mean, we did it for the journal, not for.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Before we get into like our quick shot kind of fun questions, I wanted to ask you a question about, I took the oral board exam last year. In retrospect, thank God I passed and it went well. You were the past director and chair of the oral board exam, which is an incredible honor. I mean, this is the
Yeah.
exam that everyone in our specialty takes to become a board certified plastic surgeon. Um, Tell me about your experience and where do you see the future of the oral board exam?
Well, it was amazing. At the time I was the oral board chair, you actually left and you knew whether you passed or failed.
Oh gosh.
That's
Yes,
scary.
so I know that was very tense. So basically, We handed you an envelope that late afternoon. I know. And it was very dramatic. So we actually uh, gave it that before you got on the plane. So I mean, I think the oral board is kind of your one of your last things. It's rites of passage. Everything in life is a rite of passage. And the written and the oral exam are rites of passage. And I think, we really try and be fair and I would say 99% of the time it's a fair event, and sometimes mistakes are made, but pretty uncommon. I really tried to weed out, the unfair examiners when I was there. Some of them were seniors and some of them were not, but because you can be a tough examiner, but you can't be a bad examiner. You can't be a biased examiner. You can't be a turkey because
Yeah,
people's lives are at stake. So, I
for
mean, I
sure.
was known as a difficult examiner, but I was always fair. And the fact of me knowing is I rarely failed anybody. I just didn't. But I
Hmm.
made it feel like they really, they made it worth their trip to come to Phoenix. But I never, the secret was I rarely failed anybody unless I thought they were just unsafe. And really that's what it is. The oil board is just
Exactly.
about, we're not going to ask you, well, what article was that written in? We're going to say, is this person safe? And it's
Yeah.
kind of the same criteria I used to, for my residents. And that's really what it's about. And I bet you thought it was fair, right? Say,
Totally fair. Totally fair. And to the audience who are listening tonight, I mean, this is the perspective of the past chair, just trying to make the exam fair. And even though it's difficult at the time, hang in there and just, it is about ethics. It is about ethics and being a safe surgeon
yes.
for sure.
Right.
What's funny is that they changed the hotel location. I don't know if you liked the hotel location when you were the chair, but they changed it. So
Well, I've been given it a few years, but it was a very kind of dated hotel. Is it better now?
yeah, no, it was the same. I didn't go to the new one, but it was the same. So so but I wanted to ask you. So we've talked a lot about academic plastic surgery, all these different societies, all your different roles, and it's you're very unique in a sense that you had probably um, such strong leadership roles in academic plastic surgery and still mentor, you still teach. And now you have probably the most influential position in cosmetic plastic surgery. And that is incredibly unique. I don't, I'm a younger surgeon, I'm a younger faculty member, but I can say it that not that many people have those two hats and do, assume those two roles really, really well, and can go from a chair of a department to cosmetic private practice with a clinical professor role at Baylor, but also now do the cosmetic side of things so incredibly well. So tell me about your practice and where you see like the future of cosmetic surgery.
Yeah. Well, I think, in medicine and in life, you can be great at only a few things. And when you hone your skills and you can become great. And, I had three careers. I did hand microcraniofacial, then I did breast Mohs and burn reconstruction, and then this phase is on facial cosmetic surgery. And basically each phase is so different. And I've been very lucky to be in a city like Dallas and to be in a place where you can do all those things. And also everything is a cascade. I'm a better plastic surgeon because I was a craniofacial surgeon and because I was a micro hand surgeon. I can tell you by far, I'm a better cosmetic surgeon because of my training there. Now, of course, today all of that goes from residency to social media to I'm the best, which is the shortcut. And I see that. I see that in my residency, that my fellows where they go, God,
Hmm.
I'm done, and I'm going to get a big Instagram following. I'm going to be everybody's famous on their own website and in their own Instagram page. Just remember that. But
Yeah.
very few truly are. So, and you guys are doing, you're doing it the hard way and the right way. I still think that's the right way. But so I would say, um, you got to do what you love to do. And today, I mean, I basically do faces and noses, and I travel and lecture and operate around the world. Like this year, I operated in India, and I lectured in Europe several times, and in South America, and it's fun to do. And each time you're giving back, and I think that's the most important thing, because some of the most enthusiastic audiences are ones that don't even get the journal. Like in India, um,
Hmm.
I spoke to 3,000 plastic surgeons that needed live surgery, and many of them they never had access to the white journal, which is
Wow.
terrible.
That is crazy.
Something
And
that I'm
yeah.
Something that I'm curious about asking you, I played college basketball, so I'm very familiar with habits and routine, and I'm interested in that. And now, being an intern, it's at the forefront of my mind is like trying to find the time to do everything that I need to do and want to do. You said you would wake up and read 40 articles, and review them. I'm just curious about your routine. Are there specific things that you always do, or has your routine changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody has a life routine, and it does evolve. Remember, the worst zone you live in is the comfort zone. If you live in the comfort zone, you're going to be in the dead zone. So I think your routine should be where you are in life. And I think for me, I get up at 4:30. I'll do stretching. I'll make coffee. I'll do, then I'll do a little social media, probably 5, 10 minutes, and then I'll look at my emails, and then I go to work, because I usually start surgery at 6:30 or 7, and I operate 5 days a week. I see patients on the afternoons, and then I do things like this in the evenings, and like I'm gonna go walking with my wife here in a little bit.
Oh,
I
that's
know it's
great.
dark in Dallas, but I try and do that. And you want to hang out with people you like, your friends and family, and that's it. And don't hang out with people that are life suckers. Okay, so have a great routine. Don't hang out with life suckers. Hang out with people you like and trust, and always have three goals in mind when you go to bed and get up in the morning. They may not be the same, but you got to have three things you want to accomplish every day. And when you're done with that, you've got a successful day. Once you've done with that, you're done. And then everything else is gravy. So
Yeah.
just think about that.
Yeah.
And then you'll be focused on life. And, then things will fall in place. And you got to have short and long-term goals, whatever you want to do is, as a resident, you got to, read every day. You got to read for cases. You got to read, all of, whatever series you're looking at, read the journal every month, things like that. Just so you can really stay up to date, because this residency is the most impactful time in your career, where you have focused structural learning. But after that, it's all you. Your best CME after you're done is, unless you're in academics or teaching every day, is your patients. Your patients are your best CME. Now, those of us who are in academics, we live and breathe, and because I have two residents, two fellows, and visitors every week. So I'm constantly inundated with that. Um, but most people live in a silo, which I think is a very dangerous thing. Because sometimes when my fellows come back and watch me 5 years later, they say, God, you're not doing what I taught you. I said, remember, I said, if you're doing half the things I taught you in 5 years, you're outdated.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a simple concept like that, honestly, Dr. Work, but a lot of people don't get it. That you just constantly you can't be in your comfort zone, like you said. I think that says it perfectly. So you
It's
said what
yeah,
time you go
it's
to bed at night. You said what time you get
uh
up in the morning. What time you go to
11,
bed at?
12. 11 or
Wow.
12.
And how many days of the week? Because I see you work out. How many days of the week do you work out, and what do you do?
I try and work out 3, 4 days a week, and then I try and walk every night with my wife. I do.
Yeah, that must be a
No,
sign that we got to wrap things up.
Yeah.
no, no, no. I was
Yeah,
fine. I mean, I haven't gotten the cold shoulder yet. So.
no, we just have a couple more like fun questions. Hank, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you again, Dr. Rourke. This has been incredible for someone in my position to have this opportunity and have you on the podcast, and we're so grateful for that, just to learn. And I think it's going to be very valuable for all of our listeners. We just have a few more fun questions that we ask everybody.
Sure.
Um, so I'm curious what your favorite surgical instrument is.
Well, I've designed all my surgical instruments. Microns, I mean, it's not a plug, but so I've designed them all. I think my favorite one is my curved rhinoplasty scissors. They're long curved scissors, and those are great. And they're utilitarian scissors for dissection and for opening the nose and for facelift surgery. And so, but I've designed about 50 or 60 instruments. So.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah. Are you a music listener in the OR, or do you kind of like things silent?
Yeah, no, I am. I like, I usually start with the 70s and 80s rock and roll, and then we'll go to Rihanna or even Taylor Swift, and then come back down. And then this time of year we listen to Christmas music. But
Okay.
yeah,
I
it's
love
kind
this
of,
time of year.
I do, and my office is really Christmas oriented, so they just do all the Christmas stuff. But basically, I usually start with, 70s, 80s, rock and roll, Fleetwood Mac, and then we go to Rihanna and some hip hop, and then sometimes the resident fellows want to add some crazy stuff, and um, and then when we close, we go back to rock and roll usually, and occasionally Taylor Swift, Cruel Summer. But she's running out of boyfriends. She's running out of boyfriends, so the music probably won't change. So,
Yeah.
Any other questions on your end, Hank?
Just last one. What's your favorite thing about Dallas, the city?
the favorite thing about Texas is that it is the people, the place, the ability to just, expand. I mean, Dallas has been good to me from plastic surgery, from a great place to live. I raised my family here. I love Texas. It's a free state. It's a great state. People are wonderful everywhere, but I love Texas. I love the aura of, Texans have always had the aura of being, kind of rebels. And I guess sometimes I'm considered that, but basically it's a great place to live. Obviously, I wish we had a true ocean. My wife's from Florida, but I love Florida. But it's a great place. And you always go to where you want to live and raise your kids and have fun, and it's a great
Yeah,
place. You can fly anywhere in the world from Texas,
yeah. You also
including
you
Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's true. Um, you've also talked about your son and your daughter and your wife, obviously these walks. Um, how have you been able to do everything that you do, but still be a good family man?
Well, I
You
mean,
have you have to be.
depends when you talk to my kids. But you try and be there. I mean, the biggest thing is, when your kids are growing up, you always got to be there as much as you can. I mean, because there's always another meeting, but there's not always another soccer game. So I tried to be there for the soccer games and the ballet, and and it gets you really have to prioritize that. I mean, I really try to do a lot more for my daughter, but my son as well. But it's hard, but it really means so much to do that. And
Mm.
it's like the song "Cats in the Cradle." You really you only got one shot at it. So, how many kids do you have?
Three daughters, two, four,
Yep,
six.
hang with them because after age 7, they got other people they're going to hang with. Now I'm the one
Oh,
calling
that's
my
sad.
kids. I'm the one calling my kids and say, "Do you want to hang with me?" During COVID, I would go visit my daughter just to see her and hang out with her in DC wearing a mask. I would just go see her because she was in ballet, and same with my son. And because obviously those are those 6, 8 weeks when we couldn't do anything.
Yeah,
So, hang with your kids and that's important and in your family. Because in the end, all these awards and stuff, they belong in the garage. And
yeah,
your family does. So you got to put it in perspective.
yeah. Well, you must have a very, very, very big garage.
I do. I do. No, I'm expanding my office, but it's all good. Like
No, I
I
know.
know, like I came back. I was a visiting professor at Mayo, and they give you these awards, and I said, well, that's great, and I know where but I mean, they're great. I mean, it's great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an honor to go to these places and teach.
No, no, you're right. I'm cherishing the moments with my kids while they still like to hang out with me. I really am. But gosh, I mean, I
Really,
can't
really
say
good.
how valuable this was tonight. It was such an incredible honor. I hope you enjoyed being on because there's just so much where we can learn from people like you, and we really got to spread the word and spread the energy. And that's kind of the heart and soul of this podcast, and a lot of it is actually thanks to Hank. So if you give us your mother's email, we can send her this podcast to prove to her that you do work.
She's
We
in
also
heaven.
we also have to
She's
send
in
you a
heaven,
log.
uh,
but she'd be very proud of you because
uh,
I have this famous story. My mother, she went to so many graduations, and then so finally, when I finished medical school, she said, because I was the only one that really finished, like in my class that went. So when I finished medical, she said, "Okay, you're finally a doctor, and you're finally going to get a job." And she said, "I'm not going to any more graduations." Of course, I think I had about 4 or 5 more after that. So then about 8 years later, I said, "Mom, I finally have a job." So anyway, it was funny.
well,
It's
I'm
great.
sure she's still looking down on you and incredibly, incredibly proud. So
Yeah,
incredibly proud. But thank you so much, Dr. Rourke.
you
It's
bet.
nice to reunite.